Alcohol. It's a poison. The only poison I knowingly and willingly put into my body. A poison I seem to enjoy putting into my body, but it is a poison. Coming up, I'm going to be educating myself and in turn, hopefully you as well, on the effects of alcohol on the human body and brain. What is it? What does it do? And how harmful is it really? Should I cut down further? Should I stop altogether? Will educating myself be enough to encourage me to change my own habits? Let's see. Before I get on to all of that, I just want to briefly outline my own relationship with alcohol. Some of you will resonate with what I'm about to say, others won't. Either way, it will come as no surprise to those of you who've watched GCN for any length of time that I like a beer. Or 6.
I've had at least 8 mineral awards myself.
So what do I like about beer? Well, I love the social aspect. I like nothing more than to sit down with a bunch of friends and shoot the breeze over a few beers. I also love the fact that it removes some of my inhibitions. Contrary to what you might expect of a YouTube presenter and commentator, I am actually quite a shy person. But after a couple of beers, well, I feel more able to converse. More things pop into my head to converse about. And after 6 beers, I might even be persuaded to get on the dance floor or do some karaoke. That part is definitely not a good thing, trust me.
At this age, how are them man still hating? A young boy in a different country, but he never been on vacation.
I would also say I'm a happy drinker. I'm not the sort of person who gets angry after a few beers. On the contrary, in fact, I get less confrontational when I'm drinking. I felt it was important to define my own relationship with alcohol because everyone is different. And I think it's worth you having it in the back of your mind throughout this video and what I'm about to say. So what I'm about to tell you about alcohol doesn't come from a teetotal, health freak influencer. It comes from somebody who is currently assessing their own alcohol habits and deciding what the most appropriate action should be. Now, there will be some of you who watch this video who see yourselves in me. You have similar habits. Other people watching the same video will feel so awful after just a single drink or so awful after a whole night of drinking that they wonder why on earth anybody would want to put alcohol in their body in the first place. First things first then, what is alcohol? Well, I'll keep this to the alcohol that is found in drinks, which is called ethanol. Now, according to the World Health Organization, ethanol is a psychoactive and toxic substance that can cause dependence. Ethanol is made when yeast ferments with the sugars in grains or fruit or vegetables. So for example, in beer, it's made through the sugar of malt or barley, in wine through the sugar of grapes, and in vodka through the sugar of potatoes. Alcohol is a drug, even if the alcohol industry will try to persuade you otherwise. And just like other drugs, it's addictive. It affects the way your brain and body works, and whilst it can make you feel relaxed or happy, it's also a depressant. And it's highly calorific. A gram of alcohol contains 7 calories, a pint of beer over 200. Drink 6 of these and you're halfway or more to your recommended daily calorie intake. And that's even before the kebab. Is alcohol bad for us? Well, it'll come as no surprise to most of you when I say yes. Yes, it is bad for us. Most poisons are. And more recent research indicates it's almost certainly bad for us, even in very low quantities, contrary to the previous notion that a glass of good red wine a day could help you live longer. More on that later. So I'll go over what happens in the short term when you consume alcohol. Within minutes of consuming an alcoholic beverage, the alcohol will be in your bloodstream. It gets there either through the mouth or stomach lining or through your intestines. If you've consumed food beforehand, that will slow that process down, but you can't slow it down by eating after you've had an alcoholic drink. Over the next few minutes following consumption, more and more of the alcohol that you've consumed will get into your system. Then after around 5 to 10 minutes, you will be starting to feel the effects of that alcohol. And it will affect your balance, it will also affect your mood, How it affects your mood is different from person to person with different quantities, but for most people, the release of serotonin and dopamine and the reduced activity in the amygdala part of the brain, which controls anxiety and fear, makes you initially happier and more confident. It also reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for impulse control. So you can quickly start to see why people do so many stupid things and why so many accidents happen through the consumption of excessive alcohol. Now, you may initially feel warmer with the consumption of alcohol, and that's because it dilates the blood vessels, which are quite close to the surface of your skin, allowing more blood to flow through them. That blood, though, has been moved away from our internal organs and also allows heat to evaporate from our bodies more quickly, so your core body temperature does then start to drop. As you then continue to drink alcohol, your body will attempt to metabolize and get rid of it from your system. Just under 10% of what you consume is exhaled through your breath, which is why you can literally smell alcohol on someone's breath, and also why breathalyzers work. Your liver works overtime trying to metabolize the alcohol in the system, but it can only do that at a rate of around 1 standard drink per hour. So if you drink more than that, the excess alcohol stays in your bloodstream and system, which is why after a higher volume of alcohol, speech can become slurred and vision can become impaired. Alcohol also affects genders in different ways. So in general, women will feel the effects of X number of alcohol units quicker and for longer than men will. That's firstly because on average women weigh less and so have less water in their body and bloodstream, which is where alcohol is normally found. So the more water you have in your body and your blood, the more diluted the alcohol is going to be. That isn't unique to gender though, so if you're a 60 kilogram male, it's more than likely you're going to feel more effects from alcohol than the man that's twice your size. What is unique to gender though is that women tend to have less of the dehydrogenase enzyme, which breaks down alcohol before it reaches the bloodstream. And it's for those reasons that the recommended daily or weekly units of alcohol allowance are lower for women than they are for men. So let's get on to the short-term effects of alcohol. They include reduced inhibition, anxiousness and stress, reduced impulse control and judgment, but increased happiness and confidence. Excessive alcohol can increase the risk of injury through falls or other accidents due to decreased balance and decreased fear. Alcohol also makes some people more agitated or angry. It can lead to memory loss, and most people will experience a hangover the day following excessive alcohol consumption. Now, that hangover is caused by dehydration because alcohol is a diuretic. It's also caused by irritation of the stomach lining and increased acid production, reduced blood sugar levels, and also drastically reduced sleep quality, which is something I've spoken about in previous episodes in this series. You're also going to find that your resting heart rate rockets overnight, as does your breathing rate, but your heart rate variability plummets. Now, interestingly, some people are more susceptible to continued regular excessive alcohol consumption simply because of their natural genetics. Whilst alcohol makes some people feel almost immediately drowsy and tired and therefore unlikely to want to drink, there are some people at the very other end of the spectrum for whom alcohol makes them feel more energized the more that they drink. They have a hyperactive dopamine response, which has been linked to alcoholism. So if you go to a house party, which is full of people just old enough to legally drink, the ones still full of energy in the early hours of the morning are the most likely to have a drinking problem later in their adult life. Contrast to that, the ones that have fallen asleep somewhere in that house by 11 p.m. probably won't. So those are the short-term effects of alcohol, but then most of us know how we respond personally to alcohol. It's the longer-term risks that we either don't know about or we just choose to ignore. Here we go then. Drink excessively for years and you are far more likely to suffer from heart disease or liver damage. So in 2022 over in the USA, alcohol was involved in 46% of liver disease deaths for people aged 12 and over, with that value being higher for men than it is for women. Meanwhile, a study in the Journal of American Heart Association shows that the vast majority of substance abuse-induced heart attacks are through alcohol. There's an increased risk of diabetes, an increased risk of weight gain and therefore obesity, and an increased chance of short and long-term impotence and other problems with sexual performance and fertility. There is also a likelihood of reduced testosterone levels in men. Your chance of getting cancer also increases. So the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is a World Health Organization agency, classifies alcohol as a Group 1 carcinogen and has done now for over 2 decades. What that means is that there is enough evidence to say that alcohol can cause cancer in humans. So stomach cancer, bowel cancer, breast cancer, mouth cancer, throat cancer, and liver cancer amongst them. It's also long been accepted that 8 drinks or more per week for women, 15 or more for men, will negatively affect your brain, how it works, and even how it looks if it's scanned. As such, drinkers are more susceptible to brain-related conditions such as strokes and dementia. Now, given everything that I've just mentioned, it sort of goes without saying that if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, drinking any amount of alcohol is a really bad idea. And it's probably not a good idea for any of us, pregnant or otherwise. So the World Health Organization changed their stance on alcohol in 2023, where it said there's no safe level of alcohol consumption for anybody. Even a small amount comes with health risks, and this falls in line with a number of national public health agencies who are now giving much stricter guidelines when it comes to safe levels of drinking. That was probably quite a lot to take in. It was a hell of a lot for me to think about as I was reading through the literature and studies in preparation for this video. But what then about those studies that have linked low levels of red wine with increased longevity? I mean, can alcohol, a specific type and a specific dose, actually be good for you? So a couple of decades back, some studies emerged that indicated red wine could be good for the heart, particularly if combined with a healthy Mediterranean diet. And I'd say that that was music to the ears to quite a few people. But unfortunately, some of those studies didn't account for red wine drinkers generally being wealthier, more active, more educated, etc. Later studies that did take those things into account didn't find the same benefit of drinking red wine, and the most recent research has shown that even 1 glass of wine a day actually increases the risk of high blood pressure and heart problems. It's not looking particularly good, is it? But don't worry, I persevered, absolutely determined to find something that links alcohol with a positive outcome. And I stumbled upon this from the University of Oxford here in the United Kingdom. Researchers there decided to look at some studies to see whether alcohol may play a role in social cohesion, given its long association with human socializing. Having a strong social circle, that has been for a long time associated with a longer life, so I thought this one looks promising. Now, the opinion of Professor Robin Dunbar of the University of Oxford's Experimental Psychology Department said that the study showed that frequenting a local pub can directly affect people's social network size and how engaged they are with their local community, which in turn can affect how satisfied they feel in life. He continued, and I continued to quote, "Our social networks provide us with the single most important buffer against mental and physical illness. While pubs traditionally have a role as a place for community socializing, alcohol's role appears to be in triggering the endorphin system, which promotes social bonding." Are we, or am I, clutching at straws here? Quite possibly, because I think that at this point, the evidence that alcohol in any quantity is bad for you is pretty much irrefutable. And so, like lots of things in life, it comes down to personal choice. For me, I'm currently prepared to sacrifice some of my quality sleep to accept the risks of alcohol that I've outlined in this video for a night or 2 a week socializing with friends and or family. And yes, I do understand that alcohol shouldn't be necessary to socialise. But I think it's that, historically, which is how the human race sort of got ourselves into this predicament in the first place. I'd say a fair few of us, with more than a bit of encouragement from the alcohol industry, have come to associate alcohol with almost every occasion, good, bad or indifferent. Going to a wedding? Well, let's have a few drinks to celebrate. Getting divorced? Let's have some drinks to drown sorrows. Funeral? Same sort of thing. Let's have a drink afterwards. Finish the working day? Let's have a drink to wind down. Music festivals, watching sports, having dinner out, or meeting up with friends and family. The list just goes on and on and on. And in almost all cases, not drinking makes it feel like you are abstaining, as opposed to partaking if you do drink. So waiters, friends, colleagues, they'll ask for justification as to why you're not drinking, but nobody ever asks you why you are drinking. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody. But I do think that that attitude is changing and will probably continue to change gradually with future generations. In fact, there are already studies here in the UK that show that 18 to 24-year-olds are the most sober adult age group, which is absolutely fantastic. My oldest son, Ralph, is 22 now and doesn't drink a drop. I've probably put him off. So, if you choose not to drink, more power to you. That is the best decision that you can make for your short and long-term health. If you do continue to drink, it's recommended that you leave as much time as possible between your last alcoholic drink and your bedtime. So believe it or not, and this is why I'm chuckling, the best time to consume alcohol is at breakfast. Not if you've got to work or drive, of course, but if you're on holiday, for example, and you have a few drinks between breakfast through to lunch, and then have the willpower to stop, that's going to be better for you than drinking from dinner through to bedtime. You might look a bit strange though, because that is not a societal norm. I'd love to hear your own thoughts on alcohol. How does your alcohol consumption currently look? Are you going to change it? Have you already changed it? If so, how has that felt? Feel free to get involved in the comment section down below. I'm sure there are going to be some very strong opinions and some remarkable transformation stories. Now, for those of you who've watched this video in isolation and haven't seen the start of this sort of journey that I'm on, I should probably point out that one of the reasons I wanted to make changes in my life was because I was acutely aware that my alcohol consumption was far too high. I wanted to cut it down. And I'll define too high for you. So typically, I would drink 4 to 5 nights a week, and on those nights, I'd have somewhere between 4 and 8 beers, so way too much. If I totted up the units per week that I was having then, it was close to 60 and actually often over that. And that's based on UK units because I've been made aware that a unit of alcohol does differ from country to country. So I have successfully cut down. Rather than drinking 5 nights a week or more, I'm only drinking on 2. Do I feel different? Not particularly. I do feel better about myself because I know that it's better for my body to have reduced my intake. But with everything that I've talked about in this series, it's about the bigger picture. As I said in the very first episode, this is not for me about being perfect. It's not about living like a monk. I would say that my exercise regime is very good, so is my diet, so is my sleep. So I'm doing a lot of things right. So on balance, despite still drinking a bit too much a couple of nights a week, I feel like I'm doing okay. That's not to say that I won't further reduce my consumption in the future, but the lifestyle I'm currently living is one that I'm confident I can live for decades. I'm not suddenly going to fall off the wagon in a couple of months because it was all too much to stick with on the long term. And I think that's probably a fairly decent ethos for most people. Almost everybody has some sort of vice, something they enjoy that they know isn't necessarily good for them. But as long as we've got almost everything else in our lives in order, we're on the right track. In conclusion, I'm not here to demonize consumption of alcohol, even though it's clearly better to avoid it if you can. But I'm also not here to champion it or to say that it's absolutely fine. It's not. You have to do what you feel is right for you, knowing the latest science and research. This series is really all about looking at that science and what might help us live longer and live a healthier life, and then using that knowledge to make our own informed decisions on how we want to live. Because at the end of the day, what's the point in getting to 100 years old if you feel like you've sacrificed a lot of what you enjoy along the way? Now, despite everything that I have just said, I am going to stop drinking alcohol through October as sort of like a personal experiment that I'm going to document in the next episode in this series. I'm going to be looking at how that affects my sleep, my heart rate variability, my resting heart rate, mood, productivity, consistency in exercise, and perhaps most importantly, whether I can learn to enjoy it. If you'd like to join in with me, please feel free. It's part of Whoop's Sober October that they've done for the last few years. Right, a very brief update now on my own progress since the last episode. There's not actually a huge amount to say. So I have continued to go to the gym a few times per week, generally 4 or 5. I've continued to do some running and some cycling. I've continued to only have alcohol 2 nights per week. I've prioritised sleep, and I've vastly reduced my use of those nicotine pouches. In early November, I'm going to be retaking the health, strength and fitness test that I did back in March for episode 1. So then we'll see how much difference this has all made over the course of about 6 months. Okay, I look forward to reading all your comments, and I will see you soon with the next episode. Oh, by the way, all the beers that you saw me drink in this video were alcohol-free. Unfortunately, we filmed this on one of my non-drink days, which was terrible planning. These could have all been on expenses. See you soon.